Hello and welcome to Haunted Highways. Today we're adventuring from the cryptid road trip that we've been on for the past few months with the Cryptid by State series, and looking at a few roads that we may wish to avoid. Now with this topic, there are quite a few that are said to be haunted, or have some form of unexplained events occurring on them, but I wanted to present you ones that have more than just one type of encounter. As of late, my channel has been focusing heavily on cryptids, but just between you and me, I've been really wanting to make something about ghosts for quite a long time. So today's video should provide us with such a topic. So without dragging this out any longer, let's head down the roads where beings of the paranormal supposedly call home. We are going to start off with a slower one, but I promise you encounters ramp up from here. Our first destination is US Route 44 in Massachusetts, between the Rehoboth and Seekonk line. When it comes to haunted roads, there are plenty of stories of women in white who ask for a ride only to disappear without a trace. However, this location also has similar activity, but with a very interesting and, dare I say, sinister twist. On this road you won't come across any ghostly woman in white, but you are said to sometimes encounter a male spirit with red hair. What makes this really interesting is that for the most part, all descriptions of this being tend to stay the same. He will appear to be a man in his late 40s, is around 6 feet tall, he has red hair and a beard, wears a red plaid shirt, boots, and work pants. The only thing that changes is that some say he has normal eyes, while others claim they are red, yellow, black, or even glowing. In most encounters he appears like a normal human being, but others have seen him looking partially solid, with the other part being ethereal. Now, regardless on how he appears, he seems to be a spirit that fully enjoys messing with the living world as much as possible. Sometimes he can act like a ghostly hitchhiker, where he will continually stare at the driver while sitting in the passenger seat before vanishing from sight. Also, there are reports that he can simply appear in the backseat of your car for a moment. In these instances, all have reported that after he leaves, they can hear a man's laughter, like he is taunting them. If this ghost isn't looking for a ride, many have had encounters where he will appear in the road, leaving many to think that they actually ran over a pedestrian. It is said if you stop your car, no body will be found, but you will hear the man's laughter coming from the surrounding woods. Things get worse from there, since it is claimed that he can cause your car to have issues starting as well. If you choose not to stop, then he allegedly keeps reappearing in front of your vehicle over and over again. In one story, a driver wasn't so lucky, since he was traveling on the road and he claims the face of this ghost appeared pressed right outside his windshield before vanishing, and again with his signature laugh. The other thing really odd with this being is that it has been mentioned that he can utilize car radios to talk to people. I say talk, but honestly, he uses this to laugh at them. In one famous story, a couple broke down on the road with a flat tire, and the husband got out of the vehicle to go to the trunk. While outside, he saw this being appear farther down the road, and he was waving at the man. Thinking this was a person trying to help them, the man walked up to the being to talk to him. When he drew near, the red-headed ghost started yelling at the man before vanishing from sight, but suddenly he began to hear the sound of laughter emanating from the woods all around him. Unknowingly, at this same time, the wife, who had stayed in the car during this whole event, relayed that she kept hearing a man's laughter coming from the radio in the car. Some think that this spirit is that of a farmer who had died in the road, but no one is sure. If all this wasn't bad enough, apparently there are tales of a strange creature that also roam the roads that are the size of a large dog but are grotesque in appearance. This reminds me of the black dogs that I recently spoke of in my Paranormal Tales from Truck Drivers video. Honestly, I couldn't find a lot of information about these creatures, especially since the red-headed ghost takes most of the stories when talking about this road. However, if anyone knows more about them, please let me know. Moving from this location, I wanted to be more inclusive of my worldwide channel base and mention a road not located in the US. While there are plenty to choose from, the one that I found most interesting was the A75 Kinmount Strait in Scotland. The most talked about sighting is a really strange one, and it was reported to happen in 1962 by brothers Derek and Norman Ferguson. Apparently, they were driving on the road around midnight, when suddenly a large hen flew at their windshield, but it disappeared the moment it would have hit. Right after that happened, they saw an old woman running directly at their car with her arms spread wide. Yet again, she was nowhere to be seen after what should have been an impact. This event was then followed with a whole menagerie of other animals in the same fashion, such as cats, dogs, goats, more chickens, and even some creatures that they were not familiar with. Finally, their last specter was that of a furniture truck that also disappeared moments before collision. What is really odd is that the whole time this encounter was happening, their car kept shaking like something else had a hold of the wheel. Now, I include this story since it is the one most frequently talked about, but I do question it. In my younger days, while driving home, I frequently was swerving to miss raccoons or various other animals that were actually a figment of the bar I just left. So we are left with either the brothers had a little too much, were extremely tired, actually slaughtered a whole farm including the residents, or they really saw a ghost parade. I'll let you decide that one for yourself though. With all that out of the way, there are other stories that are just as strange. Well, maybe not as strange as the previous story, but they are spooky nonetheless. Much like many of the hauntings on roads, apparently ghosts walking in front of vehicles is pretty rampant on this stretch of highway. The very first encounter occurred in 1957, and it was reported by a truck driver traveling in the area. He was driving along A75 when a couple in Victorian clothes appeared in front of him walking arm in arm. They showed up so suddenly that he thought he hit them, but after checking, there was no one to be found. Garston and Monica Miller had a very similar encounter in 1995 when a man ran at their car wearing only a sack and waving a rag. Again, they thought they run him over, but you can't hit a ghost. There were many other sightings with the same scenario taking place throughout the years, and one was even reported to the police. Each time these ghosts are seen wearing various forms of clothes from a bygone time. In some reports, people have seen a spirit of both a man and a woman who appear not to have eyes, but they take to berating travelers unwary enough to stop. Some of the most interesting encounters come from lorry drivers. As a note, being from America, I looked up what that word refers to, and apparently it is the term used for what we call a semi-truck. In one case, a driver saw a whole group of spirits walking down the road dressed in what only can be described as medieval peasant clothing, complete with pulling hand carts or carrying sacks. Much like the other stories, they too vanished not long after being seen, but apparently the event was so traumatic for the driver that he quit his job not long afterwards. It really sounds like this road has quite a few residual hauntings from before the highway even existed. Unlike the red-headed ghost in Massachusetts, who obviously knows what he is doing, many of these spirits seem stuck in some kind of loop. I saved the best, if not strangest location for last, and that would be Clinton Road in New Jersey. This topic was suggested to me by two viewers who have the usernames KoroKoroASMR and Matthew Harrison, so thank you both for setting me on this path. Before I start, I could have sworn that Clinton Road was said to be home to a dog man, and that I had made a video about it. Yet, I couldn't find any stories about that, nor did I see the video that I thought I had made. Although, in complete honesty, there are quite a few places in the US named Clinton Road, so maybe this is what's causing my confusion. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, each road would get more and more interesting sightings, and this road doesn't disappoint. It pretty much has everything you could hope for when it comes to the paranormal. Clinton Road is a 9-mile path that runs between West Milford and Passaic County. For the most part, it doesn't see a lot of traffic, but many describe how eerie the feeling is when driving along it. This is for good reason, since many strange things are said to make their home there. Starting with the least threatening is the famous story of the ghost of a boy who was said to have died on one of the area's 2 bridges. From what I can gather, no one has actually caught sight of the spirit, but the story tied to it puts him and the activity together. According to the legend, a small boy saw a coin lying on the road, and when he went out to get it, he was hit by a car. Now, the legend branches off in two separate stories, with most stating that if you throw a coin off the bridge, then the next day you will find that the boy may return it to you by placing it in the center of the road. Yet, other stories claim that if you stand on the road near the bridge, the boy will physically shove you, with many assuming he is trying to prevent the person from having the same fate as himself. Many people have tried throwing a coin, but the problem is that, as I mentioned, there are two bridges many miles apart, and no one is sure which one he haunts. It is also said that he only returns coins when he chooses to do so. That really makes the odds small of proving his existence. In hearing how this boy apparently died, I would assume that it would be the bridge very close to a part of the road known as Dead Man's Curve, which would explain how a driver might not see a boy standing on the road. Tying with this location is a story that isn't really that old, as it was said to happen in the late 80s. According to the story, a girl was driving faster than she should have been down the road in her 1988 blue Camaro when she came to Dead Man's Curve, lost control, and was killed instantly. From that point on, people have claimed to see that same vehicle appear abruptly and just as quickly vanish from sight. Now, there are stories of another vehicle that makes its rounds on the road, and that is of a phantom black truck. This vehicle will drive right up to your bumper, flashing its lights and even ramming your car. Some have claimed that it will try to run you off the road, while others state that it will simply continuing down the road if you're brave enough to pull over. What is interesting is that apparently this vehicle does have a specific destination if one was to choose to follow it, but I couldn't find any stories telling where that may be. It could be one of those stories that those who follow it never return, for all I know. Let's go back to the area known as Dead Man's Curve. I swear most towns have a place called that name, but we never have activity like this. Around this part of the road there are stories that a traveler may come across an animal such as a cow or an out-of-place object like a sofa just sitting in the middle of the road. All who tell this tale state that you shouldn't stop, nor should you get out of the vehicle, since it was placed there by a strange creature that has a taste for human flesh. The whole blockade turns out to be a trap to lure unwary victims in for an easy meal. Hellhounds or various types of dog-like creatures have been seen roaming the road. Travelers have claimed that they saw a ghost dog chasing them down as they drove, while others have seen an odd-looking wolf with red and yellow-colored eyes. I'm not sure how that color combination works for eyes, but I'll just go with it. Some claim that if you were to turn your headlights out while on the road, you may see many ghostly forms standing all around your car. Now, I would be remiss to not mention that this area was home to a 3-story castle built in 1905 by a man named Richard J. Cross. The building was officially called Bear Fort after the mountains that surrounded it, but it was quickly given the nickname Cross Castle. Richard died not long after in 1917, and his family sold the building to the city of Newark in 1919. The building wasn't looked after, and much of the interior was destroyed by a fire later on. Finally, in 1988, the stone structure was torn down. Now, before it was removed from the landscape, many claim that the shell of the building was used for ceremonies for satanic rites. Due to this, people claim that the area has a lot of restless spirits still walking around, and many claim to hear the disembodied chants from the past emanating from the forest. While many of the previous stories can be taken with a grain of salt, there is picture proof that the castle did in fact, at one time, serve as a location for satanic gatherings, with their writings on the wall. Although, it could be argued that someone unaffiliated with the belief knew the writings and put them there to scare people away. Going back to the strange sightings, UFOs have been spotted fairly frequently in the area as well. People have reported seeing a flash of light followed by a triangular craft flying in the sky. At other times, multicolored lights have been seen, and in one instance, they were reported to follow some unlucky traveler. I did not include all the sightings that have been seen on this road, but I chose some of the most interesting ones. I hope you will look into this further, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed. I should note that many locals have stated that they have never come across any of this activity. We can look at that two ways. Either it draws the stories into question, or we can just file it into the category of ghosts only appear to those they choose to. I seriously hope you enjoyed this, and I'm curious, what was your most favorite story? Also, I had a few other roads I wanted to talk about, but I didn't have time to include them, or after looking into them, I felt their facts were really lacking, more so than others. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you could share my videos with someone you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later!